I mean, kind of bringing that back into like the fashion world in general. And I know this is unrealistic for a lot of people, but it should be realistic. And it comes back to your own kind of responsibility and your own decisions. But you don't necessarily need to buy a new piece of clothing every week. You don't need to consistently buy every month. Be aware that every single time you buy a piece of clothing, what is actually behind the scenes of making that piece of clothing, what happens afterwards. If you're buying a piece of clothing and wearing it once or twice, and now you're going to push it back out, you're literally creating those pollutants. And I actually do find that it's very hypocritical, because I do know a lot of people that speak to being very environmentally friendly and that they're really caring about the environment and all this, but I do see them buying a new piece of clothing weekly. Right. And since that industry is the biggest pollutant, for me, it shows that your actions don't really lie with what you're saying. And I think that's really important to put people into check and realize that, look, this industry, the fast fashion world, it's great. It's great to look good all the time. It's great to have all these clothes. But think about, do you really need that piece of clothing? Is it just because it's cheap doesn't mean that you necessarily need to buy it. Right.
And definitely, I mean, we have Christmas right around the corner. And all the people that are buying all their Christmas clothes, I can tell you it's not for the summer. Yeah. And I can tell you that they're going to go shopping again before summer hits with a whole new wardrobe of clothing. I mean, I was just looking at some stats earlier, and let me find it here. So it says that we're actually the largest country that gives out secondhand clothing and exports secondhand clothing to the rest of the world.
Wow.
So I think that's huge. And I mean, we only know of Goodwill and, nonprofits and organizations that will pick up the clothing we don't want. But how many of us truly are doing that and putting it in a bag, making that phone call, or, going and dropping it off somewhere? Yep. Whereas we just throw it in our trash or whatever it is. And I mean, as consumers, we're not conscious of, okay, when you're done with your clothes, here's a place to drop it off, just like with your mattress. I mean, the mattress, at least when you get a new mattress, most of the time it gets picked up by the company, even if it wasn't their own mattress, because they know you definitely can't have a bunch of mattresses thrown out in the streets.
Yeah, you'll get fined.
And that kind of pollution that happens on the streets at that point has a whole transportation effect. Yep. So when I think of industries being responsible for their industry, the only thing I could think of is at least mattresses, taking them out of the homes when they get new ones, versus think about all of the consumer products that go into our homes, some that never leave and some that leave through the trash. Yep. But aren't actually recycled or even being able to be put in a landfill.
And I think that's a really, really important thing that you just brought up, which is, yes, maybe you're buying a lot of clothing. Take that next step. If you do want to buy a lot of clothing and that's the issue that you're having, and you don't want to cut that out, that's fine. That's a personal decision. Obviously think about the effects. However, at least give it to like Goodwill or donate it out. Like, at least do that much. If you're not going to care about the first part of the process, at least care about the second part of the process. Give that to somebody else in need. Give that to somebody who's dealing with poverty. Give that to another country. Give it back to society then. At least like that's my at least take on it. If you don't want to care about the full thing, at least give it away afterwards, so that somebody else can get use from it, so that piece of clothing doesn't live for just like 2 or 3 wears and that's it. Because that's the biggest thing for me that bothers me about the industry, is just how minimally people wear clothing. It's just like, I'm gonna wear it 1 or 2 times, done.
Yeah, and I mean, there is companies, like Rent the Runway that, tried to help with that issue and the consumers wanting to buy this piece of item and then only wear it for one time. But then again, it comes back to the consumers and them truly being responsible. Because even them, as a company, they dealt with consumers who wanted the item to rent it, but then didn't even treat it with care or like their own. And if you're sharing as a community now products and sharing into a product inventory, almost share it, everyone has to see it as sharing closets with each other. Yep. And it's not just, this is the company's and I'm just going to rent it because this is what I deserve to spill wine on it if I mess up, and in the end, now this is a community philosophy, and community values are really important in understanding that it's not just about this individualistic, this is mine and this is all mine because I'm renting it. Well, it may be yours temporarily, but it does belong to the community that's participating in this renting type of behavior and practice for the fashion industry.
Yep.
And it comes back to being aware and people truly caring as consumers of products like this to understand, to have even respect for communities that are coming together for specific causes like these where they share responsibility.
Yeah,